But there must have been a reason that Moody's must have recovered something at this point,
Yeah,
correct?
fraud. Yeah, there's accounting problems within AIG, but something else that we will get into in just a moment also occurred simultaneously. But they were fooling around with some of their accounting. Okay? But Moody's said at this point in time, you guys probably don't understand this, because AIG was always a low-profile company. But until about a year ago, they were considered to be the cream of the crop of insurance companies. The most prudent, the most careful, the most profitable of any insurance company. Okay? They were considered to be, a class act all the way. All right? Okay, so anyway, moving on. What happened that Moody's said all of a sudden, we think you're a BAA company rather than a double A?
Did Lehman fail first?
Lehman failed. But what happened? The point I'm trying to make, in terms of assessing all of this, is restrictive covenants are saying they're early warning triggers. There's going to be a problem, we'll have an early warning. Because you don't go from double A to BAA in one day. You go single A first, and then BAA. So it's like this sort of signal that trouble's ahead, and you have time to adjust and time to react and all that kind of stuff. But this time there was none. And when AIG says we don't have $85 million, what happens next?
You're in default.
You're in default. There's CAA, right? So in 1 week they go from AA to CAA. What happened to the early warning?
No good question.
Doesn't exist, right? Doesn't exist, right?
What did Moody's do to do these ratings? It almost sounds like they're really on the hook for this too.
Well, you should understand Moody's gets paid depending upon how many securities that are issued with their rating. So does Moody's have an incentive to say this is bad, I wouldn't buy this if I were you?
No.
But they also have an incentive to say this is good, right? Just like you said.
That's
How's
right.
it going?
It's a conflict of interest, right? We
So,
get,
so why September? Like, why not November or January? I mean, it looks like it's their call, essentially.
well,
Moody's.
Well, probably
they
change.
just decided in September. See, AIG had been on the radar screen ever since, what do you call it?
Lehman.
Lehman, but even before
Bear
that.
Stearns.
Yeah, the Bear Stearns one, right? But they had, I don't know, when was Spitzer's problems? What month? I don't know what month, but it was like in the spring, wasn't it?
Yeah, spring fever.
He was governor, right? But how did he make a name for himself? How did he get to be governor?
He was the.
He went after AIG.
Steamroller.
He was the first guy to go after AIG. The chairman, he indicted the chairman, named Greenberg, I think. Right? Okay, so these are the rationales. These are the rationales that we know how to do it this time. You can trust us this time. Okay? So you don't need this Glass-Steagall Act. And by the way, if you don't get rid of the Glass-Steagall Act, we're going to London. Where we don't have to listen to what you tell us. Those British guys, they're really nice to us. No? See, in England, it's a lot different. You do what you want. Right?
And you have tea all the time.
Finance-wise. Okay. So now, what causes all of this to fall apart? Well, now we have the mark-to-market rules. Pretty much beginning around 1995. became institutionalized around 2000. What's that mean?
Got put up.
You gotta rate your assets at fair value,
You gotta rate your assets when?
present fair value, quarterly.
When? Quarterly, right? Every quarter, you gotta put down what they're really worth. Because before that, what would you do? What would you do before the market days?
You record their full value, I guess.
Historical value. So, give an example. I got a $800,000 mortgage. The bank lends it to me. 3 months go by. All right, it's June 30th. I lose my job. I call my friendly J.P. Morgan banker and say, you know, I got a little issue here. I may be behind for a little bit on my mortgage payments. The J.P. Morgan guy says what?
No problem.
What's he gonna say?
The company pays
No,
tax
he
rate.
says, I'm throwing your butt out of there. We're taking your house, right? Right? They're not nice people when it comes to these things, right? But what does he tell the accountant?
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine, no problem.
No reason to think he's not gonna pay his mortgage. What's the mortgage worth on the books of J.P. Morgan?
800,000.
800,000. When do they have to say it's not 800,000? Under the old rules,
When they get rid of it.
when they sell the house, right? How long is that gonna take?
30 years.
2-3 years, right? Before they throw me out and put the market on sale and go through all the tax stuff and so on. It takes 2 or 3 years, right? So they can push aside their losses for 2 or 3 years under the old rules. So in 1995, they said, no, you can't do that. You gotta mark to market. You gotta put down every quarter by an independent auditor what those assets are really worth. Right? We okay with this? Maybe?
I read this whole thing about Enron, they use this mark to market, and they used it the other way, they built it like a,
No, they used it for their assets, not their liabilities.
well, the story I read was that they were like building some like coal-fired plant somewhere in India, and they said, okay, now we think that, the electrical use in India is gonna go up, so we're gonna value this plant that we just built for much higher.
That's right.
And-
Sometimes assets do go high.
Right.
Sometimes it helps you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right? But in Enron's case, what they did it for their assets, but they didn't do it for their liabilities. That's why some of those guys went to jail. They were marking up the assets, and even though the liabilities were higher, they kept them low. They did that with their revenue stream also. All right, so we okay with this? All right, so, good idea or not? Tell us what they're really worth. What are they really worth? On March the 31st, you gotta tell the accountant, this is what it's really worth, and he's gonna verify that. This is what it's really worth. How does the accountant know what it's worth?
Doesn't.
So he has to see what they traded for, right? What the recent price was, as close to March 31st as possible. So you show him my mortgage. And the accountant calls up a bank and says, how much would you pay for this guy Violzi's mortgage? Then the guy starts laughing on the other side of the phone, right? Him. He can't even pay his Con Ed bill. Forget it. I wouldn't pay anything for it. What does the bank have to put down on the balance sheet? If the other bank says nothing. Zero. Zero. So what does the mark-to-market do? It causes big fluctuations quarter to quarter. Now, I start driving a cab.